All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Full disclosure, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, as often is the case with stuff like this. So if you're having any issues with audio, please feel free to drop it into the chat and let me know, and we will figure it out as we go. Otherwise, let's just get started. I'm really excited to be here this morning with Dr. Jason Lee, Naturopathic Doctor. We are going to chat today about everyday toxins and how they're affecting our health. And I think that this is such an important topic and one that is too often overlooked or not even just appreciated. And I think that once we're able to recognize where we can make meaningful changes in our life to improve our health, it's such a powerful place to be in. It puts the power back in our hands to be in control of our health. So this is just another way that we can be a part of our own health journey and make choices that affect us in a positive way. Just like we know that it's great to get amazing sleep, to eat whole, fresh foods, to drink lots of water, all the things that we know are good for ourselves. This is just a piece of the puzzle. And an important one, and one that I don't think that we're talking enough about. And so I'm personally thrilled that Dr. Jason Lee is here today to talk to us about it. Jason is a naturopathic doctor out of Oakville, Ontario in Canada. Jason's been in practice for 15 years, teaching and empowering his patients to restore their body naturally through healthy living. He always looks first to treating the root cause rather than the symptom. And he has a true gift for naturopathic medicine, for educating his patients and empowering them to reach their health potential. Jason happens to have been a key player in my own health journey, so I know firsthand the profound impact that he can have, but also the magnitude of the impact of these lifestyle changes and what they can have on our body. So, Jason, welcome. I'm so excited to chat with you. One more note to everybody. We want to hear your questions, so please feel free to drop them into the chat. If they're relevant at that moment, we'll talk about them then. And if not, I'm going to hold them until the end. We're going to do a question and answer period, and you can have all your questions answered then. Okay. So Jason, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for sharing your time with us this morning, especially on a Saturday. So I think what we want to hear from you and your big brain, we just want to know all of the information that you have, the technical stuff. So first of all, like, where does environmental toxicity come from? Like, what does that even really mean?
Yeah, I mean, environmental toxins, I mean, people always think of toxins as in factory and pollution and environmental stuff outside, but they can come in from small environments inside the house as well, from anything from furniture outgassing to household cleaners to, different kinds of compounds we use in the home. I mean, there's even concepts out there called sick building syndrome, where the actual building, the glues, the resins, and all the paints and things like that also cause toxicity in the body. There's been studies that have shown that factory workers, firefighters, and people that are exposed to a lot of chemicals can have a life expectancy 10 to 15 years less than the average person. So there are effects that come into the body. A lot of these things, unfortunately, you don't see. I mean, you can obviously see car gas, like diesel pollution, smoke, things like that. Those are visible, but so many of these things are hidden. They're hidden and they're in small amounts, so we don't really realize they're actually there. So it's even air fresheners. I mean, people buy things to make their homes smell better. A lot of those have tons of chemicals in them. Cookingware has chemicals in them. And of course, there's the whole beauty, skin care, shampoo. So the list can go on and on. I mean, we can really do a talk for hours and hours to looking at each one of these things individually. I could probably do an hour talk on just cookware itself because there's so many things in that. But to make things easy, we'll just talk about more skincare type stuff and other environmental things of that nature. But it's everywhere basically, and you don't have to see it. That's the thing. You don't even have to smell it. People think, well, I'll smell gas, I'll smell things. Sometimes that's not the case. It's even things you put on your body. Some of these things are hidden with other fragrances that are also toxic to the body. They make it smell better, maybe even smell fresher, like pine needles or something like that. And it's actually not real, right?
Yeah. I think it's also really common for people to think, I'm not to not recognize that just common sort of conditions can be a symptom of an overburdened body. So it doesn't have to be that you're bedridden or that you're terribly ill or that you have a reaction to chemicals. It can be much more subtle.
Sometimes the biggest complaint that people have from toxicity is just fatigue, tired. The body just can't function properly. And we'll go into that a bit later in the talk, but basically that can be just the only symptom, or it can be headaches, or it can be joint pains or things like that. It doesn't have to be like sneezing or coughing or wheezing or any of the respiratory things people are used to, or overt skin rashes or contact dermatitis. If you touch something corrosive, for example, people think, well, if my skin reacts and obviously I'm reacting to it, it can react in many other ways, which is also a challenge to detect.
So things like fatigue and things like that you mentioned that are much more common symptoms. Obviously, you can't necessarily make the direct connection, but by limiting sort of contacts and stuff, can you expect to feel different, to see the effects in your health?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things is that, a lot of these chemicals are not designed to be in the body. The body is designed to work with what it has inside of it. It's designed to break down and metabolize organic materials and things like that. But these chemicals contain usually volatile compounds and resins that are unable to be broken down in the body. Things like toluenes, styrene, xylenes, ethylenes, different kinds of things like that are off-gas from our home. There's also things like, BPA, which is found in plastics to make it more malleable. These things all come into the body in small amounts over time. And the body, there's a rule, right? If you can't pronounce or understand what the substance is, neither can your body. It's kind of that thing. If the liver can't filter it, if the bowel can't eliminate it, people think, well, it'll just disappear somehow. It'll come out of me. They just believe everything that goes in their body somehow will magically go in through the body and just disappear and come out the other end. Or come out through our sweat and it'll go away. But a lot of the time it does not. The body tries its best to detoxify, but sometimes it cannot. And when it can't, those residues sit inside the body, and that's what causes the issues over time, right? So the way the body eliminates toxins is basically, the simple ways, right? Like you urinate, or it comes out with stool. Those are primary emunctories. So an emunctory is basically drainage ports in the body where the body dumps toxicity. So kidneys, liver, and bowel, these are big things, right? So that's where stuff comes out. If it doesn't go out through that area, it'll go through a secondary port or an intermediary port like lymphatic system or blood, and it'll travel through that system and try and come out through another source like the skin or the lungs. So it's almost like if you have junk in your house and you want to get rid of it, you're going to push out the front door or the back door. There's just two ways to get that junk out of the house and you get it out, which is great. But if those doors are locked or they're not able to eliminate properly, at some point you'll say, I got to get this stuff out of the house. So just throw it out through a window. At that point in time, it doesn't matter where it comes out. You just want to get it out of the house. That's a secondary emunctory. So the body will try what it can to detoxify. But if the body burden becomes greater than that, that's when we have a lot of issues, right? So the way the body filters is there's a couple processes, right? So when toxins come into the body, they're normally excreted through the bowel, right? Which is where it's supposed to come out of. So in a healthy person, they excrete most toxins that come into the system, or quite a few. And then the rest just goes into the liver for filtering, which we'll talk about later. But in an unhealthy person, they may not even have a bowel movement every day. They may go every couple of days, or their bowel is so toxic they can't adequately filter properly. So then you get a lot more material coming into the blood that has to go to the liver, right? So in the liver, you have another phase that happens. They call that conjugation, where the body takes that toxic compound and actually makes it slightly more reactive. Now, this is a very dangerous part because it's making the compound more dangerous in a sense, so that it can bind it to water, so it can make it excretable out of the body. That process is controlled by the liver, and with antioxidants in our body, it protects the body from damage, right? So that's called conjugation. And the last stage is elimination, where you have that water-soluble compound now flushed to the kidney, and the body gets rid of it. So there are all these stages that the body goes through to detoxify. It's like a Brita water filter. You're pouring in muddy water on one end, and it goes through the filter system, and the clean water comes out the other end, and what the body doesn't want, it eliminates. And normally, if the burden on that is not too bad, everything is fine. But if the burden's greater than that, that's when we have a whole bunch of other issues that happen in the body, right?
So what kinds of things could we look to identify if our cup is full?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one that most people will initially see is fatigue. So fatigue starts in the body, and then people just say, "Oh, I'm busy," or "I didn't sleep enough," or "I'm getting older, and that's why I'm tired." The fatigue gets worse and worse to the point where it becomes somewhat debilitating. That's when you see a lot of issues. You'll see a lot of fatigue around when you wake up in the morning. When you wake up in the morning, you should feel pretty rested. But a sign of toxicity, sometimes you wake up in the morning, you feel absolutely horrible, even though you slept fine throughout the night. Some people think it's, well, I didn't sleep properly or whatnot, but you probably did sleep properly. For some, the body burden is just so great, it creates a bunch of issues. So that's a big thing. You can have digestive issues, obviously, because the bowel itself has got toxins coming into it. It's going to aggravate how you digest food. That food undigested goes into the bowel, not broken down, causing more issues for the bowel, because the bowel is mainly an absorption area, not necessarily a breakdown area in the upper parts. So if you don't break it down properly, it will not absorb properly in the other end, kind of thing. That can cause issues like constipation or diarrhea or just digestive pain. Gas and bloating is another sign, because these toxins also destroy the good bacteria in the gut. When the bacteria in the gut gets altered, you have bad bacteria coming in, and that creates other things like putrefactive compounds and things like that that really make for odorous gas or just pain. That's more of the digestive issue. Then you can move into other areas that are more systemic. So you can have like issues like allergies and asthma. So skin reactivity, rashes and things that form on the body, asthma or obstructive airway type conditions. So asthma, they'll diagnose as an actual condition, but what it really is a symptom where the bronchus spasms. And when it spasms, you can't breathe properly. So the spasm is from something else, something's irritating the tissue that way. There's also pain syndrome. So people are just coming and they're inflamed. They have pain everywhere. You touch certain parts of the body and they're in pain, yet they didn't work out, they didn't do anything strenuous, they're just in pain. The most aggressive condition like this would be more of a myofascial pain syndrome, a fibromyalgia, or a chronic fatigue syndrome. These are really challenging disorders because they're diagnosed as conditions, I guess, but they're more syndromes where it's a collection of symptoms. They don't really know what to do. All the lab work comes back somewhat fine. The patient's blood work comes back fine, yet they feel fatigue and tremendous pain. More intense conditions can be more autoimmune in nature, where the body starts attacking its own tissue because you have all this toxins deposited in tissues. The body sees that as foreign, starts attacking that, and next thing you know, you start attacking your own tissue. That's a big issue, and you're seeing tons of autoimmune issues arise in that lately, like huge ones for not only there's thyroid issues, but multiple sclerosis, scleroderma, and a whole bunch of different kinds of things, and autoimmune bowel conditions, right? Medically, they'll say, well, there's no real cause of it. We don't really know why, but there's a massive increase in these disorders. And why is that? I mean, the body's trying to fight it. It's trying to protect itself at the same time it's damaging its tissue because something's not quite right. One of the biggest things you see a lot of now is infertility. Like that's becoming a huge, huge thing. People just can't get pregnant. Yet, oddly enough, all the blood work shows fine. Sperm count's fine, egg quality is fine, everything's fine, hormone levels are fine, can't make a baby, like for whatever reason. So you're seeing tons of that as well. So there's a rise in all of these systemic type conditions. What I'm seeing in the clinic that is most concerning is these neurological conditions of unknown etiology that are, they're not Parkinson's, they're not ALS type symptoms, but they're called Parkinsonian-like conditions where patients have weird motor skill issues and things like that, yet they have no other medical signs of anything. They can't find anything. They don't respond to Parkinson's medication, yet they have Parkinson's-like symptoms. All these things contribute over time. And it's not like one exposure is going to cause these things. It's exposures over time and the body's inability to eliminate it. That's the big, big issue, right?
So I'm hearing so much of those really common things. A lot of that is part of my story, and I feel like people listening or watching the recording are going to hear bits of that that feel familiar. And it's easy then to be like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. So can you, we know that these things are coming at us from all different angles. But I think the important piece here is, like there's lots of things that we can't control, but there's also so many things that we can. So
for sure.
Where would you recommend somebody starting?
Yeah, I mean, to just further that point, because there's some important stuff I want to talk about for sure on that before we go into the actual what to do, is that like one of the things that happens, people always say, when you put in these chemicals and things into the body, there's such a small amount, it really doesn't affect the body. So really, what can I really do? Because all these things are so small, it doesn't really matter. But that's the problem with body burden, right? The average person, a woman, puts on average 150 chemicals on the body each day. And in a year, it can be up to 7 pounds of toxins going through the body, right? In skincare products, creams, chemicals, things like that. Men are close behind. A lot of these products have compounds in them. I mean, you just read the label on the bottle. There's things you can't understand. And if you can't understand, the body for sure can't understand it. And a lot of the regulations around these products and compounds in them haven't changed in years, like since the 1930s, 1940s. Because there's such small amounts, they say, well, it's in parts per billion here, in parts per million. It's so small, it doesn't really matter. But over time, these things affect the body bit by bit. The Environmental Working Group calls these things endocrine disruptors, which they basically go in, they disrupt how things work in the body. The body has a system of communication tools, like the endocrine system, the immune system. They're all communication tools in the body. And if those communication tools are disrupted, you can have a lot of issues. In the body. According to, again, the Environmental Working Group said that, even in the core blood of babies, they found over 200 to 300 compounds found inside these things, and quite a lot of them are toxic. So they're building up in the system. And one of the scariest things they have is what they call transgenerational issues, where the toxins of the woman actually pass off to the fetus, right? So before the baby's even born, they're already accumulating toxicity for the next generation, because these things do not degrade in the body. They don't degrade in the environment, and they don't degrade in our body. So they're stored in the fat tissue. They're stored in other tissues in the body. And people think, well, fat is like, the fat around, your waist or the love handles and things like that. But remember, many endocrine organs are fatty organs, like the adrenal gland, like the thyroid, like the pancreas. These are all tissues that are made out of fat. And one of the biggest conditions I'm seeing a lot now is autoimmune thyroiditis or Hashimoto's thyroiditis, where the body is attacking the thyroid itself, causing the thyroid to move into dysfunction. And the only way to truly test that is to check thyroid antibodies. And a lot of time those are not tested because there's no medical treatment for it. So if you have Hashimoto's, they're just like, well, we'll just keep monitoring that and we'll see what happens, because there's no treatment to bring down those antibodies, medically speaking. They just watch and wait because they know at some point the thyroid is going to get destroyed, it's just a matter of when, and then they'll put you on medication at that point in time. But in the process leading up to that, they don't really know what to do, right? So, these are issues. And when they say, the parts per billion are so small, it doesn't really matter. Well, think about this, for a second, which is kind of interesting. And I find this fascinating, is that birth control itself uses hormones in like basically 1/10 of 1 part per billion, and that has an effect on hormone balance in a woman, right? So, like the NuvaRing, for example, is a plastic, birth control device inserted into the body, and the plastic leaches hormones into the body at very, very, very small amounts. And that is already enough to change a hormonal cycle in a woman. So, if that's able to do it, what about all the rest of the stuff we take in? What are the rest of the stuff we put in our bodies? And what does that do to the bodies, right? So that's a big thing I have an issue with. They call that bioaccumulation. It's accumulation of toxicity over a long period of time. One exposure will not make that big of a deal. Even many exposures won't make that big of a deal, but exposures over your lifetime will. And that's why you see these things developing later and later in life, right? People developing autoimmune disease usually happens around the 20s or 30s. Other kinds of things like cancers and things happens a bit later, although you're starting to see those things earlier. That's what's concerning to me, is that these things that were never meant to go in the body are going to the body. The body's trying its best to metabolize and detoxify and sort out these issues, but it just can't seem to do that for whatever reason. And then it builds up in the body. Like there's so many chemicals out there, even like, people use these fake tanning things. I mean, there's like 22 chemicals in those. Blush can have up to 16 chemicals in that. Shampoos, 15 different chemicals. Eyeshadow can have up to 25 to 30 chemicals in them. Lipstick, 33 chemicals in there. And body lotions, up to 30 chemicals or more. Some of the most toxic things people put in the body are like deodorants and sunscreens. That's why we have a line of those things here in the clinic, because there's so much toxins that go inside these things. I mean, deodorants use aluminum to basically dry the tissue. That's what gives it that drying effect. But the aluminum absorbs into the body, And that has a big effect on the nervous system, right? So, you apply the deodorant once, it's not that big of a deal, but people use it every single day, all the time. And right in this area is where all the lymphatic tissue is, right? So the lymphatic system drains into that area around the breast, around the tissues, and it causes more toxicity. So it's that long-term exposure that's more concerning to me. And that's why we try to talk to patients a lot about detoxification. We try and get them to change some of the products that they use, that they put on their skin, that they use in their body, because it can help bring down that overall body burden as much as you can. You can never truly eliminate everything because the environment has stuff as well, but you can try your best to eliminate what you can,
Well, and so that's what I find really empowering is, I can't change everything, but if I can change my deodorant, and I'm using that every single day, and I can change that for every member of my household, that's a meaningful change. If I can swap out my sunscreen, my cookware, whatever, that's because of those repeated exposures, it has a bigger impact. So it may seem like a small thing, but it actually can have a pretty profound impact.
Yes, there's many ways. I mean, the first way is what you mentioned, right? Like number one, limit your exposure, right? You can get crazy about that too. Don't stress out about too much, but just try to reduce it as much as you can in the areas you can. And the other part is more helping the body detoxify things a lot better. So if you're able to limit the exposure as much as you can, it's almost like bringing down your expenses. And then at the same time, it's helping the body detoxify better. It's like bringing up your income, right? So if you have a high income and low expenses, things work a lot better than a low income and super high expenses, right? So that's where the issue is. You start building debt. And when the debt becomes to the point where the body can't afford the interest on that debt, that's when we have overburden issues in the body and toxic deposition. And that causes a lot of problems. So there's definitely a lot of things you can do. I mean, changing things up is key. I mean, knowing what to change is key. And starting with something small. You have to do everything all at once. Like some people think they get stressed out because they think, oh my God, I got to change everything in my house. I got to change all these things. Like, every piece of furniture in the house has to go and all these things. I mean, not really. It's more just like starting with one small thing, like your skincare program, or maybe the shampoo you use, or the toothpaste you use. And then starting with like a deodorant that might be better. Use something every day, sunscreens and things like that, and creams, things you put directly on the body, even soaps and stuff like that, switching away from the processed soaps to more of a natural soap. These have big effects on the body, right? They always say the best skincare or body products are things that you read the ingredients, you understand all of them or most of them, and you could probably technically even eat it. I mean, it's those are sort of the best thing. I mean, it can't guarantee it tastes amazing, but at least it's something the body can understand and utilize, right?
Yeah, right. So what are some easy changes that that we can make? Like, if we're looking to make some changes for ourselves and our families, where do you think we start with? Just like pick something that resonates. You mentioned the EWG as a tool.
Yeah, environmental working groups, always a great organization. They have tons of information. A lot of it's free. Tons of information on the chemicals we use, the products we have. You can even add in the products that you're currently using, and it'll spit out if it's good or not. Like, it can tell you a lot of these things. But start with the big things. I mean, I would start with any kind of deodorants or anything like that, any kind of like that thing like that, or creams, things you put on the body, and shampoos. Like, those are things that you basically use on a regular basis. You're actually rubbing it into the skin. Those are really, really key. There's so many other things we could do, and I can go into a lot of those things. I mean, when it comes to clean living, I mean, let's talk first maybe about what you can do for the body itself, right? So, when you're looking at products, I always think of my mom's 3 famous lines she always used to say when I was a kid. And number one is like, if it's too cheap, it must be bad. And she's kind of right in a sense, because cheap products have a lot of junk in them, right? Like, they use processed compounds that are not natural, and they're just not great for the body. If something stays fresh for too long, it's not good either, because they're using preservatives in it, right, to keep it that way. Those preservatives keep that thing fresh in a sense, but then they preserve your own tissues, and they're not great for the body either, because you can't eliminate them. They're usually things that don't break down. And the last one is, if you can't understand what's written on the box or label, then neither can your body, right? And that goes not just for your skincare products, but also foods that you eat and things like that. So, we can't change our environment. The one thing we can do for sure is remove what we can control, and also help our body detoxify and eliminate toxins as best as they can. So, the steps that I always tell people, they're very simple things. I mean, they're part of the treatment programs I give to a lot of patients, but they're just, anybody can follow them too. And number one is just helping the liver work better. So how do you help the liver work better? Number one, you get proper sleep. I mean, it's weird because people think of sleep and liver, it's like, how does that work? But the liver needs probably about a good 7 or 8 hours to regenerate and regulate itself. Most of the cleaning that the liver does is at night. It does some during the day as well, but it detoxifies a lot at night. So if your sleep cycle is broken or you're not getting proper sleep, it doesn't allow that liver that house cleaning ability to clean and detoxify the body. Number two is drinking water. That's absolutely critical. It's usually 30 mils per kilogram of body weight. So for about a 150-pound person, you're probably looking at about 2 liters of water a day. Remember the line I always tell the patients that dilution is a solution to pollution, right? You have to flush the body with water, because remember, the liver takes things that are toxic and makes them water soluble so it can dump it out of the body. So you actually need water as an ingredient to do that. If you don't have water or enough water in the system, you cannot actually detoxify these chemicals. That's why the kidney is super huge. That's why it's so important. It's strange. I mean, we have patients that come into the office that go to the bathroom like number two, usually like once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks. The world record is once every 3 weeks. And that person is alive. They're not feeling great, but they're alive. If you don't urinate, after 24 hours, you are not feeling great at all. After 48 hours, you're moving into kidney failure and you are really not well. By 72 hours, you're pretty much dead. So, I mean, that's how important it is to detoxify from our kidney. People always think of elimination from the bowel, but the kidney is super, super important. And we need water to drive that process. You know, if you want to help the liver work better, there's things you can do to help it work better by chewing your food really well. Don't drinking fluids at meals, because that puts a lot of burden on the liver and your bowel. That's super, super huge. One of the cheapest and best ways to help the body out is a technique that seems to go against a lot of, what we're taught, that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And that's just to skip breakfast or skip a meal, right? And have just a lunch and a dinner, or just eat in a smaller window of time, like 8 hours or 7 hours instead of, 12 or 13 hours. Because the more we're eating, and we're living in a snack society, right? We have like breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner. The body's always secreting insulin, and insulin itself, while it is good, it is inflammatory, and it does not allow the body to detoxify. So when you eat in a smaller window, let's say 8 hours, or you're having 2 meals, let's say a lunch and a dinner, or breakfast, late lunch kind of thing, it gives the body that break to actually detoxify, because the actual break of fasting is itself a detoxification tool for the body. Once you get above 16 or 18 hours of fasting, you're actually moving into a state of autophagy, which basically is a Latin word that means autophagy, which the body's breaking down and eliminating toxins. So it's one of those things you can do, and that's for free. That's a very, very good step to do. I mean, and of course, eliminating toxins that come into the body. People drink a lot from plastic water bottles all the time. There's bisphenolic compounds in those plastics that help to mold the plastics. Those compounds are not great in the body. They act almost like estrogens in nature, which is really weird because they're called xenoestrogens. Xeno means foreign, estrogen. So while it's not really estrogen, the actual compounds in the plastic do act like estrogen in the body, and that affects the body. So removing those plastic bottles, switching over to glass or stainless steel or ceramic type pottery type cups, things like that, makes a big deal. Of course, alcohol, smoking, these are things that everybody knows about, but they are challenging on the body, right? Even vaping itself has toxins that come from the vaping coil that create the massive amount of heat in there to vaporize the substance that goes into the body. All these things are huge. That's why for a lot of patients, I do try and get them to drink more water. I do try to get them off coffee as much as I can, or reduce as much as I can. And same with alcohol. Alcohol is a tough one too. And a lot of people, at night they'll have an alcoholic beverage and they think they're going to use it to relax. But the problem is that the liver is most active in the evening. So when you have these things coming in, it really aggravates the body as well, prevents the liver from detoxifying, and it can cause issues. And then there's a whole topic on foods that we eat. I mean, this talk could go on forever about what to eat, what's the best food to eat. But the reality is anything that's made from foods where you can understand the ingredients in them. That's the most important thing. Any kinds of additives, processed foods, superheated oils that come from takeout foods, coloring, dyes, chemicals, all these things are absolutely hard on the body. One of the trends I'm seeing a lot in kids, I see a lot of kids drinking like Gatorades and Powerades and all these kinds of drinks and juices. And some of them are made, they have on the label, it's like, oh, it's 20% real juice. Well, what's the other 80%? I mean, the coloring, like the chemicals, the drink is like fluorescent purple or fluorescent green. I mean, it tells you something, but these are really, really hard in the body as well. And of course, movement is huge. I mean, people need to move. When you move, it's obviously it's great for the body, cardiovascular wise, and just overall. But when you move, it actually helps the body move lymphatic tissue in the body. So when the lymphatic tissue is basically pumping, it moves toxins through the body. People that don't move, the lymphatic tissues are more stagnant in nature, and then stuff tends to build up in the system, right? So those are things. I feel like I just keep going on and on about this. I don't want to obviously make it too complicated, but simple things: drink more water, get more sleep. I mean, look at the foods that you're eating, look at the things you're putting on your body, and trying to source things that are better for you, that don't have ingredients you can't understand. That's very, very, very key. Like some people just even get them to drink water. Like I'll ask them how much water they drink, and they're like, oh, not enough. And I'll say, well, what is not enough? And they don't even know because it's so little. That's a big thing, right? So.
What I always tell people when they're just sort of starting to take notice of where they can make these changes in their lives is really like just start where it feels doable for you. Like if you feel like you can up your water intake, do that. But if swapping out your sun, if sunscreen doesn't feel like something you can do, then don't start there, right? If you need your plastics, I mean, I hope you don't need your plastics. We can, that one's a big one. So, but yeah, like just start where it feels good, right? Like if you can swap out your plastic water bottle, but you're, like just start. And then
small things done over a long time make for big changes. I mean, a lot of lifestyle changes that I made in my life started a while ago back in university, and they just started changing over the years. I'm 45 now, and I'm still making small tweaks to my program as well. I didn't do it all at once either. And as I learned more, I did more. There's some things that I look back at thinking, shoot, I wish I did this back when I was like 20. I wish I did this when I was even 15. But you just do when you can. That's all you can do, right? Not to stress out about it too much, but just focus on moving forward,
Yeah. And again, focusing on the fact that you're empowered to do this. So this is something you're choosing to do, and that you get to do, not that you have to do, that you get to do. And so now that you've had your eyes opened, figure out where it makes sense. I was the same way. I made some big changes about 15 years ago, but I was faced with some health stuff. And I felt like I was so mad that I didn't know this stuff in my teens and in my 20s, because there were so many little, like little things, habits, consumer choices that I was making, just not knowing any better. So, educating like this and just knowing better and trying to make those switches as it comes up is, you should see it as empowering, and avoid that feeling of overwhelm. Just pick somewhere to start.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. I mean, small things, like I said, done over a long time make a big deal, and that's the most important thing you can do. The body wants to work, it wants to feel better. Like it will take up anything you can give it, it'll take. You just increase the water, you cut back on the alcohol, you cut back on this, the body will take it and roll with it. It'll be like, wow, this is awesome. Finally, I got some water coming. I can actually do something about that. The body will heal because that's what it's trying to do, right? We're trying to remove obstacles to cure. The word disease is an interesting word. It's actually two words, dis and ease. The body's not at ease, right? So you have to figure out, what are we doing to our body that's making it not at ease? I mean, there's some things we cannot control. We can't control genes. We can't control where you work maybe sometimes, or other environmental toxins in the body, but we can't control a lot of other things in our body. Even genes and how they transcribe in the body, that can also be done through, the more toxic burden in the body actually changes which genes are transcribed and which ones are not. And that is a big effect on the body. So, small changes, that's all I can say.
So we talked a bunch about products that we put on our skin. I feel like we should maybe bring Anita in now, and you guys can maybe both weigh in on some of this. I'm going to just pin Anita. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, this is Anita Lee Chung. She is our resident skincare enthusiast and expert, and is also Jason's wife. She, just to give you a little bit of a bio, she was raised in a Korean family with healthy living and skincare standards. But meeting Jason has really elevated that even more. And at 43, she now shares her knowledge of healthy aging through her Me and 40 channel, a platform where Korean traditions are combined with cleaner and safer products so that anyone can get the famous Korean glass skin, even beyond our 40s. So Anita, welcome. I'd love for you to start with how Jason has impacted your story in terms of the products that you put on your skin.
Sure. Thanks so much, Lindsay. Jason, that was amazing. I've heard so many talks about toxicity, and it wasn't until I met Jason that it started to feel like real life for me. Not because that he was giving me these talks on our dates, but it was because I started asking a lot of questions about my daily routine and what I'm using for myself and also for my parents. We grew up in a traditional home where we also valued natural ingredients, but there wasn't so much of that available out there. And now that the awareness has been brought to light, I think we have a lot of choices, maybe even too much. So when I started to talk to Jason about toxicity, I also thought that it was something remote, that it didn't apply to me because I wasn't exposed to all these chemicals. I worked in my little office job, and I also had really good habits. So I looked at what I was eating. I made sure that I was drinking water or herbal teas. But it wasn't until I started looking at various products that I wasn't suspicious of before, but I was using every day. So like, for example, deodorant was one where I thought, okay, if you practice good hygiene and you're using something, then that's great. And I'm ready to go. But it wasn't until I started looking into, okay, what's the problem of deodorant and what are the correlations? And because I'm an accountant, I love doing this work. But when I started talking to my friends, I realized not everyone has the time or they don't have the attention for this. And so at the end of this talk, we thought it would be really helpful to circulate a list of common products that I've grown to switch over initially. That in my 40s, I started doing this quite late, actually. I was probably 41, and now I'm 42. And I felt like initially it was a big difference in terms of my energy level and also my outlook on how much more I can take on and it being very doable. So I see some questions and comments in the chat about the EWG, and Jason spoke about the environmental working group. And this is a really good resource for me where I would type in different products that I was using, especially the Korean skincare lines, and I didn't see what made me happy. And so my standards have been elevated, and Jason's has helped me a lot because I've gone for allergy testing and nothing has come about. So I thought I would be, untouchable. I can use anything and my skin wouldn't react. But then it wasn't until I started getting second opinions and a little bit more testing done on sensitivities. And that's where my eyes really opened. So I've gone to understand what I'm sensitive to. And a lot of people have different sensitivities. The EWG working group has come up with a common list of things that are particularly harmful. But I found a great brand that I don't need to start reading every single ingredient one by one and typing everything in. And that's Beauty Counter. So for deodorant, Beauty Counter is unparalleled just because they triple test their formulas to make sure that there's no heavy metals and there's definitely no aluminum, but also the packaging itself has been taken care of to make sure that there's no chemicals that go into the product. And so the reason why some of these products that are natural, they may not necessarily work well for you if you've tried and failed, just like I have. I realized that it's not a complete package of the outside and also what's in the inside. When the packaging has not been produced in a sustainable way or in a way that preserves what's on the inside, that can also lead to chemicals going into your body. So glass is something that I've really been noticing. And when I started typing in Beauty Counter products into EWG, they're actually verified. So I had that peace of mind that these products, they not only work for my skincare regime, but it's trusted, it's been triple tested, maybe even more. There hasn't been any recalls. And so brands like that really make it easier for people to switch over, because you're not compromising on results. It's things that your whole family may be using. So if it's deodorant, if it's sunscreen, even shampoos, if you're taking daily showers. So these are the switches that I started to make, and then now I feel a lot more comfortable.
You mentioned the environmental working group. The EWG has the Skin Deep database. There's actually an app. So you can bring it up, you can download it to your phone, and it actually has a scan function. So you can be in the grocery store or in Shoppers Drug Mart or whatever, and you can scan barcodes and get a rating for safety. The environmental working group is doing like incredible work to like, they go through all of the ingredients, but they also vet the company's at like practices and things like that. And they incorporate that into their ratings. There are other apps that aren't necessarily as comprehensive, but the environmental working group does do a really good job of making it simple. So again, it's the overwhelm, right? Greenwashing is a really big issue these days because companies know that we are waking up to the need for our products to be safer for us. And so, you know, a lot of companies are just dealing with that with marketing, right? They put a green leaf and, soft sort of graphics and lots of green and stuff like that. Even names that are like, have clean or stuff like that in the names and in the titles. But you really do need to flip over those products and either read the ingredients list, which quite frankly, you know, like Jason mentioned, for most of us, that's not a realistic practice. So what the EWG does is it actually does the work for you. Type in the product into the app and they give you a rating. So that's what I was getting at. They rate the product on a scale of 1 to 10, and then they color code it even. So green is go, red is like put it back, and yellow in the middle, where you probably want to avoid those as well. But again, you know, like this isn't about being perfect. It's not about finding, you know, perfect solutions for everything. So just making those, letting that be a tool for you as you make consumer choices.
Maybe even start with the products you use the most, like the ones that you use every single day, like maybe your deodorant or your skincare or a shampoo, and just start with that and then slowly move into other things bit by bit, right? Like even household cleaners after that, and then a couple different things, right? That makes a big difference for people.
Yeah, and some products are more benign than others, right? Like we keep on mentioning deodorant, but that's because conventional deodorant can be pretty nasty.
Yeah, it's one of the worst ones out there. It's unbelievable, and people use it all the time. I mean, aluminum, like I said, using these products is designed to dry out the body, but it dries out tissue. And when that happens, it causes a ton of congestion in the body. If you congest the lymphatic system or congest other vessels that drain around that area, you're not getting adequate detoxification in that area. So toxins build up, and that creates a lot of issues in the body. Anything that creates inflammation in the body creates mucus and phlegm in the body. And people think of phlegm and mucus like in your, you know, nasal passages and esophagus, but it can happen in your digestive system. It can happen inside your vessels, all these things, and that leads to blockages. And blockages over time means you have buildup, and buildup causes issues with tissue over time. So anything you can do to move that would be huge.
Yeah. So Anita, any other sort of recommendations in terms of what to look for, where to start, anything like that?
I think where to start and what to look for really came from within for me. And just being able to have a good resource like Jason and naturopathic doctors, also other health practitioners who have tried and tested certain products, and they make great resources in terms of asking for recommendations. I myself found that, yes, absolutely, it was the product that I was using every day that when I made the switch, it empowered me and it fueled me even more to make other switches, because just that one thing alone really made a difference for not just myself, but also for my family members. And then when I started seeing the cascading effects, that was so motivating because everyone was saying the same thing. They were saying, I feel so much better. And maybe it was psychological, but now that we've compounded that with a few other things like the shampoos, then we're really starting to see some positive results. And so, build it from there. If you like to do a complete detox, we have advice for that too. And I always go back to Beauty Counter just because for me, that's become the highest standard for skincare and for beauty. And they have a complete line. Makeup was the last thing I switched to. But even with the makeup, some people, they may say, oh, I'm not wearing it very often. But my mentality was that the one occasion that I do want to put on a lipstick, that should be clean because I am drinking a lot of water and teas throughout the day. So again, just that one item can really make a difference. And then I guarantee it'll really motivate you to do even more for yourself and your family.
Makeup is an important one too, I think, because with makeup, it's not just about the ingredients that are in the products, it's about contaminants as well. So just because of the nature of the industry, where colorants are sourced and just like true materials to make makeup, contaminants is a big issue. So you want to make sure that you're shopping with a brand that's testing for contaminants, because without that, you just don't know. Lead in lipstick is still a thing. Again, this is what Jason was talking about in the parts per million and all that. But that's not, you're not going to see lead on it, or cadmium or something like that, arsenic on a ingredients label, because it's a contaminant. It's come along with an ingredient. So it's not something you can actually look for. You need to be shopping with a company that tests.
They're not even in parts per million. Some are parts per billion. I mean,
right.
They're so small. Legislation's like, well, it's so small, it's negligible, so it doesn't really matter. Like, people have this false sense of security that the things we put on our skin, if it's on the shelf, it's been tested, it's been regulated, it's been assessed for safety, and that it's fine, because if it wasn't fine, it wouldn't be on the shelf. But the beauty industry, the cream industry, the hair industry, like the shampoos and things, it's one of the worst and completely unregulated in many ways, because it's just not seen as being that dangerous. They would do tons of regulation on formulas for babies or other kinds of foods. Even some of the foods out there are absolutely horrible as well, which is a whole talk on its own right. But the skincare products, it's unbelievable how little is actually regulated, because of their idea that it's so small, the body will be able to deal with it. But people use these things every single day. And that is the problem, that the bioaccumulation over time can create issues. Now, if the patient has inadequate detoxification just genetically, or their lifestyle is not great either, or there's just inherent weaknesses in the body, that can amplify that. People have gone or on certain medications where there's already burden on the body because they're taking, let's say, a cholesterol medication every day, or they're taking some other medication that puts more burden on the body, makes it more challenging, right? Like, so this is what creates a lot of issues for patients, and they don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here today. I'm just looking at the time and I'm thinking we should maybe open it up to some questions. So there's a few in the chat that we've sort of touched on, but if you're watching and you've got something on your mind, type it into the chat now and we'll take that over. A question came up for me. I was, while we were talking about ingredients there, is there any sort of like key ingredients that we should avoid? Like, I'm thinking primarily of fragrance or something like that. Any sort of like big hot button ingredients that if we flip over the label or we flip over our product while we're at the grocery store, what are some that should be like deal breakers?
Yeah, there's actually quite a few, but I guess the rule is always, if you can't understand it, neither can your body. Okay, so if you're reading an ingredient, you're trying to pronounce it, and you're like, that does not sound like something that I can buy at a grocery store to eat, that doesn't sound like something I know in the environment, then chances are it's not good. But the big ones are probably parabens, formaldehydes, artificial fragrances. Like that's actually an ingredient, artificial fragrance. I don't know what's in there, but that's not great. Sodium lauryl sulfate, that's a really hard one because that's what makes like toothpaste and shampoos lather. You know, when you put it on your hair and the water gets on it and you're rubbing it, it's got all the suds that come out of it. Like that is the thing that people love about their products, right? But that stuff is super brutal for the body. And phthalates as well. Toluene's another one. Compounds, those are not particularly ideal. There's so many, but those are the big ones. They're found in many, many kinds of products, not just cleaning products, but skincare products. A lot of these products are used as preservatives as well. So they just help the product have a longer shelf life. I mean, that's, you know, that's also great for packaging. It's great for marketing. It's great for a whole bunch of things. Some agents are stabilizing agents that maintain the fragrance or the smell a lot more. I mean, the thing is, if you buy something truly natural, it's pricey for certain, especially for fragrance things. I mean, when I go to the gym now, I go to the gym sometimes late at night, which is an interesting time because it's basically me and a whole bunch of like high school, university students. And when I go into that change room, there's this Axe body spray coming out like every direction. It's insane. And that stuff's so toxic to the body, but their marketing is great. It targets that specific audience, and the chemicals in there are horrible. You can smell the toluene in it. You can smell the chemical esters inside of it. But these people, they do it every day, so they're accustomed to it. So I think it's totally fine. So those are things you probably want to avoid. But again, like the rule is, if you can't understand what's written on the bottle, probably best to not buy it because there's something in there that's not ideal for the body.
I want to jump on the fragrance train just for a second, because I think that this again is something that you can take and apply to to take as a powerful tool in making those changes. It's like fragrance is not, we're not just talking about perfume and Axe body spray. Like fragrance is in everything from your dish soap and your laundry detergent, your household cleaners, your body lotion, your sunscreen, your makeup. It's in everything. And Jason said, you know, I don't know what's in fragrance. And here's like the fact is that fragrance is protected by trade secret law in North America. So companies can put literally up to 3,000 ingredients under the word fragrance, and they don't have to disclose that to consumers because it's considered a trade secret. So protect the company. But in that word, there can be thousands, certainly hundreds of ingredients that you don't know about. So again, you're doing your best to flip it over. You don't see parabens, you don't see phthalates, but that can still be in there, and it's just hidden behind the word fragrance. So for me, so for me, fragrance is an easy way for me to eliminate things. So even if it's like you have a product that you just like don't think you can live without, just switch it out for the unscented version, and make sure that on the back it still doesn't say fragrance, because sometimes products are called unscented, but it still has fragrance because they actually have masking chemicals in it. But anyway, if you know, that's a little choice that you can make, is look for those unscented products, and then again, still flip it over and make sure that it still doesn't say fragrance or parfum. Anita, any other? What's that?
Protein powders. There's an ingredient that I love. It's called natural and artificial flavors. That's the actual ingredient, natural and artificial flavors, which I find fascinating. I mean, it's just such an interesting ingredient. Why would even put it in there? But I mean, people look at it, they see the natural part, and they're like, they seem to forget about the other part of that. But even natural can be a bit odd. You want to see the actual full name of what's in there. If they group it together in these categories, like Lindsay said, it's probably got a ton of other junk in there that's not great.
Yeah.
Like, I'll show you an example. We have a cream here in the office. It's just one thing that we use, and I'll just read the ingredients on this particular thing. It's basically a skin cream for eczema and things. Just not. I mean, eczema is a thing that comes from the inside, not the outside, but to help on the top surface. The ingredients are organic grass-fed beef tallow and essential oils. It's got vitamin E in it. It's got a bit of beeswax. It's got sandalwood, frankincense, and lavender oil. like essential oils. Like that's basically what this cream is. I can't guarantee it'll taste amazing, but you could actually eat this and it'll be fine. But that's what you're looking for. I mean, people think beef tallow, like what is that? That's animal fat. Well, our skin has emollients on it and things like that. We are made out of fat. Fat is an important part of the diet and it helps with skin. So of course they would have that as the base, and then they just, the fragrances are basically essential oils, which are fantastic for the body. I mean, essential oils are from the plant itself. It's usually 100%. There's nothing else in there. But the thing is, I mean, tallow is pricey. Essential oils are a bit pricier as well, but you're putting this on their kids. Like this is designed for children, right? So, I mean, some of the worst products out there, which is super scary, and also the worst foods are things that are designed for children, which is really scary because it's like the worst stuff out there because they think, oh, it's kids, they don't even care. So it's just be careful. Even there's a like class action lawsuits against companies for like talcum powder because it had high aluminum and high heavy metals in there. And talcum powder is used in like every kid in the like 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, this was used on tons and tons of kids and it was deemed to be safe. But it's not safe. So it creates a lot of issues, you know?
Yeah, we wrongly assume that this industry is regulated and if it's on store shelves that it's safe. It's just not the case, unfortunately. But again, that
people need to know that they need to understand that the things they put on their body are toxic, you know.
So there's a question in the chat. What deodorants do you actually suggest? Do you have any?
I'll let Anita discuss that. I mean, we brought some beauty counter into the clinic, and the main things I brought in was basically their deodorants and their sunscreen, because those are the two products that time and time patients always ask me, like, what's the best one to use? And it was difficult. I just couldn't find great ones out there. I mean, there are some other ones out there that I've seen in stores that are not too bad, but the ones from beauty counter do work very, very well. So we recommend those. But I mean, again, any deodorant that works well for you doesn't have junk in it. Like as long as there's no aluminum, there's no fillers or binders. I mean, that's super, super key. But I'll let Anita discuss that a bit more.
The thing with the beauty counter deodorant is that it works. It allows the body to do what it's supposed to do. So you will sweat, but it does have ingredients in there that help you absorb that sweat. So you don't get the wetness and like the wet marks on your clothing. But also when it comes to fragrances, deodorants are loaded with them. But the beauty counter one is scented with essential oils like lavender, coconut, and natural rose. So that's why when we take a look at products and we take a look at ingredients, we also want to take a look at the company as a whole to make sure that they have an extensive list of ingredients that they are not using. A lot of the times I used to look for the green leaf symbol and think, oh, this is fine, it's clean or organic. So these are terms that aren't regulated. And also, if a product is coming from overseas, the standards internationally abroad may not be the same as what our standards are. And so when it comes to ingredient picking and choosing, we like those companies that really ban a lot more than what is the bare minimum.
With respect to the sunscreens, I like the beauty counter ones too, because they just go on a lot easier. I mean, before there are other brands I'd recommend that were pretty decent as well. And what gives them that blocking ability is to use a lot of different thicker oils and things in them that are great, but the stuff comes out like toothpaste. So when you put it on the body, it gets that big white streaks. And for a lot of patients, they just didn't like it because it just didn't go on particularly well. So I have to get patients to like rub it into their hand until it's really warm and then apply it onto the body. Whereas the beauty counter ones, they have similar ingredients like that. I know they're junk, yet it seems to go on really, really well, which is amazing. So just for ease of use, I like that product as well.
We've talked about beauty counter a bunch. Anita and I have both aligned with that company, but really it's because we stand behind the products and the practices of the company so much. And I think Anita talked to this earlier. What beauty counter became for me was a safe place for me to shop, where I knew that every single product was being held to extremely high safety standards, as opposed to a green or a clean product from a conventional brand. So just knowing that everything I buy, everything there is held to the same standard is really nice. Oh, one more point I wanted to make. When we were talking about deodorants, there's sometimes even with natural deodorants, you'll see natural fragrance on the back. And I would call that greenwashing. I mean, that is greenwashing. So they're implying that it's essential oils or something like that, that it's natural. But for sure within that, there could still be ingredients that they're using that might help the scent to stick to the skin, to last longer, so that it continues to offer that scent, things like that. To me, transparency is really important. So if you're still hiding your natural fragrance behind the word fragrance and not just saying lavender essential oil, bergamot, whatever you're putting in, I want to know those ingredients. So if there's that lack of transparency there, even if you're calling it natural, it's a no for me.
Yeah, you have to be careful. They do have ways of marketing it. It's the same for food. Like they'll write things like natural and healthy and put leaves on the packaged boxed product of food. And when you turn it over and look at the actual ingredients in the food itself, it's horrible. But people don't, they're visual, right? They see the picture of the food, it looks very good. It has words like natural. I mean, there's even a health seal on Fruit Loops, for crying out loud, because it approves that health brand that has some sort of whole grain in it. And whole grain, to be considered something whole grain in North America, has only to have about 8% whole grain in it. So that's what people don't really get. I mean, if I gave you 8% of your paycheck, is that like giving you the whole paycheck? I mean, no. So it's weird because it's just these things that people don't discuss. They don't write if something's GMO'd on foods and even in products, because, in the States, they said, well, if we write GMO on things like that, then, the public will get confused. It'll cause panic in people, it'll stress them out. So they just didn't do it. They're actually want you to be ignorant. They want you to be completely ignorant to the process and just buy based upon appearance and look. And that's what makes people suffer in the long run, because, what you don't know will hurt you in the end, right? So the more educated you become about it, the better,
Yeah, knowledge is power.
Yeah. There are a bunch of other questions I saw pop up. I'm not too sure if people want to answer those.
So there's one more. There's one here about cookware. If you want to tackle it, it says, any recommendations for cookware? I know I'm currently using Teflon pans. I know that this is bad. I know Teflon coated products are hazardous, but cast iron pans are too heavy for me. Do you have any suggestions?
Totally understand. It's a tough one. I mean, Teflon's actually not too bad because it's anodized. The pans have it's like applied compounds into the metal, as opposed to Teflon, which is sort of a spray. They spray on top of it. Unfortunately, the best pans are the cast iron, but there are pans you can buy that are called stone type ceramics. They seem to be pretty decent as well. It looks like stone. It's not actual stone, but it looks like stone. And again, these are applied into the actual materials. So there's no coating or layers that can scrape off. But for all these pans, you have to be sure that the type of things you use on it, right? You can't use like plastic spatulas. I wouldn't use that. I use wood or something like that. I definitely don't use metal, because metal will scrape into it. Once you scrape past the lining, it can cause issues with the pan itself. Also, washing the pan, what some people do is they'll wash with, they'll take the pan off the stove, put a bit of water in it and start scrubbing it with their brush, but the pan is still very hot. So the the plastic can get onto the alloy as well and then ruin your coating too. So you have what the ideal way to do it is when you take your pan off the stove, let's say it has cooked stuff in it and you're done with it. Before you start eating, it takes like 1 second where you just put some hot water in it, dump it, then put some more hot water with it, one small pump of dish soap, hopefully a natural one, and then it'll set up a little bit and let it just sit on the stove. And then when you're done, it's easier to clean and you don't have to take that, you're not going to use anything to harm that coating. There's a brand out there I saw online, I've been looking to actually get, I think it's called One Pan, but it's basically that type of stone type compound. The problem is it's still a little bit heavy. It's not just made out of aluminum, but not as heavy as a cast iron. The cast iron is heavy, they're annoying, but the good thing about cast iron is it basically is one ingredient. It lasts forever. If you season it well, they are spectacular. So with cookware, I always say spend a lot, get a little. I mean, you buy better quality. It costs a bit more, but you don't have to use a million different pans. You buy the cheap ones, you basically get ruined and you just keep using them over and over again. But what's worse is, people buy these cheap pans, all the layers get scraped off and they still keep using it because it's like, well, I don't want to buy a new one. And this one does have a hole in it. So I'm going to keep using it. So it's even worse for the body. So
Yeah.
I can do a whole talk just on cookware. Like that's something I'm quite passionate about it. But the short answer is sort of that.
Yeah, there's so many things that there's so many easy swaps that you can make in your kitchen to have big impact.
Yes.
Plastics obviously being the first one. And that's a really interesting one you mentioned, even just about cleaning with plastic. I mean, that I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. I mean, even wood, sometimes people buy these wooden spatulas and wooden things. A lot of them come from China. They're not great. They use glues and resins in them as well. You want to buy a good natural, whole made out of wood made thing. They do cost a bit more. Like a full wooden spatula will cost you instead of $2.99 or $4.99, it'll cost you $20, but then it'll last for a long time, and you get better quality that way.
Awesome. This was so helpful. There's so much information in here. We are definitely going to be sending out the recording. So you can listen back and make sure that you didn't miss any of the incredible knowledge nuggets in there. There's so much.
It's such a big topic. We could just go on and on about it. I mean, maybe we'll do smaller topics in the future of different things, but the key is just to be aware of what goes in your body, read the ingredients and start with a couple small things. And then slowly you'll just add a few more things here and there after that. And you build that repertoire after a number of years or even a number of months, you've changed a lot of things over. So, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
As a gratitude for those who have attended today, along with the recording, we will be sending a list. It's a shopping list of clean skincare switches that you can make for yourself and your family. And then we will also announce the winner of a gift package. And the gift package will include, among other things, a clean deal.
Oh, perfect.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay, so that's great. Somebody's going to get to try out the deal. That's awesome. So we will send out the recording. Thank you so much, Jason and Anita, for all of the knowledge, and we'll do this again soon, I hope.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate you saying that, Lindsay. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.